Hi, everyone. I have a question, if I may.
And introduce yourself, please.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I'm a researcher on community gardens from Germany.
Whoa.
Currently researching in Portland. And I was really impressed by all of your presentations. So thank you so much. I'm actually going to Detroit next week, Mark. So I might contact you if you have the time, maybe. I'm sorry, my connection is really bad. So I'll turn off the camera and ask my question, sorry. I had a question for Marcus, because you were speaking about community activation for some time, and I was wondering, because I come across the phrase community building a lot in connection to urban gardening, and I was wondering if to you there is a difference between community building and community activation, basically.
Yeah, that question answers itself. I mean, I think community building and for me, community activation means involving the community in the process. I think a lot of community building work will seek to bring in outside folks to maybe come in, oh, we're going to build a house for the community, or we're going to, bring in funds and resources. But I think unless the community feels activated, like they can involve themselves in the process and actually have some equity in the process and some choice, you don't see that actually continue to grow and continue to create more community building processes and work in the community. So I think, and this is something that Black Star Farmers is learning how to do better, right? I think we've been able to benefit from a lot of grants in order to do this work, and grants kind of promote more community building, right? They can more promote giving people the money to do a project, and then the grant leaves and then the project kind of fades away. So it's about how do we create sustainable solutions. And I think, from seeing the work that Jamiah is doing, and I might have said that wrong. Sorry, Jamiah, I apologize. I think, it's about how do we create business models. Activation means sustainable solutions of money coming into the community so that we can continue to build and grow. So I think activation, again, is that equity piece that needs to be added to the work, and not just the nonprofit functioning of, creating projects that are one-offs.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a fantastic question. I hope you definitely get a chance to connect with Mark. Mark, if you have contact information you'd like to share, you could go ahead and feel free to throw it in chat, your email. Anyone else have any questions before I jump into any of mine? That was a fantastic question. Anyone else?
I see Kathleen put a comment in the chat relating to Hawaii, and I would be inclined to know we're all sort of continental here. If there's any thoughts you guys might share on the West Coast, perhaps, of ways that in a small island nation there might be something valuable.
Yeah, I'd like to share a thought on that. Thanks. And thank you for bringing in the context of Hawaii. And maybe a year ago, I went to Puerto Rico, and I was really surprised during my visit to see that the food wasn't as high quality as I expected. Like, you go to Puerto Rico, you kind of expect to see like a lot of fresh food, local, but it's actually quite dependent upon the mainland to receive a lot of its food. And that is, due to business dealings and agreements. It's due to them not having full rights under the country. And a lot of that happens to any island anyway, irrespective of their national, I think, identity. It's like the context of an island is you have limited resources. You can't just expand east, west, north, or south. So when it comes to food production, same situation, but worse. It's that there's a dependency, there's a landlocked, colonialized systems that oftentimes are designed against indigenous folks and anyone who's not European descendant or just comes from money. And so in those situations, I've been speaking to people in Barbados and Bermuda and a few other islands where there are folks who are greatly with African descent, who are underneath a landlocked food apartheid system. The challenge is landlessness, I think, and land ownership. So, some advice I might suggest looking into is just start all the way at the source of where soil can be sourced and produced on your island. Begin with the source of the soil. And if you can get that, then you can get the other inputs later down the road. But figure out how to get and continually produce your own soil. And then once that trick is figured out, the other elements would just be mechanical.
Fantastic answer, Jamiah. I'm going to jump into my questions now. Unless anyone else, I'm always giving the floor to people. And actually, before I ask my question, I'm actually going to throw it back at the panelists. Do each of the panelists have a question? Thank you, Kathleen. Have a question for each other? If you don't right now, I can certainly come back to you. Or I can go ahead and jump on my question. But Mark?
Yes, Jamiah. The socks. You put compost inside the sock?
Yeah, it's 85% soil and 15% compost. That's right.
So can you reuse the socks, or do you reuse them?
Yeah, you can. It takes there are about 4 ways to go about this actually. They come out with a biodegradable version and this one that's not biodegradable. The advantage of the biodegradable one is if you're just starting a garden that you're planning to have in the ground anyway, you can bring in your socks and leave them there. It'll all blend in eventually. But in our case, we want them to be mobile and we want them to be, we don't want them to biodegrade because reusing the actual materials is cheaper. So that's like you said. But also how frequently we'll have to do this is probably about a year. Probably every year we'll have to replace the socks in the soil because even every week when we replant, what we do is we put a handful of compost into the hole and then replant and mix it around, aerate it, squish it, keep it aerated. Then we'll mix it around. But that only lasts for about a year before you got to replace, I think, all of the soil that are in the socks. So we have a supplier of that out in the country, and we have a machine that when we put the soil in there and put the sock on there, it's gonna suck it right inside and make it quick.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you. I love the excitement. So I'm going to jump into one of my questions.
Yeah.
Paulia actually in the chat has a question. I'm going to read it out loud actually before I jump into mine. In my experience in gardening, every time I am in the garden, it feels therapeutic and spiritual. Can the panelists please speak to the calming and almost therapeutic feelings working in the garden or nature in general brings? Beautiful question. Anyone could jump in and answer.
Well, for me, it's been spiritual and therapeutic and calming. On November the 2nd, I got baptized of 2008. That was actually the first day I assembled who I wanted to be on our board of directors. I invited them over for dinner. But that morning, I got baptized at church. But it seemed like ever since then, like there's been times when an event would come up and we didn't have any money, and I was stressing those first 2-3 years, stressing about funds and how we gonna put on these events. And every time the event it was like we got to the point where we just planned it and it happened. We'd walk to the mailbox and there was a check in the mail. Somebody sent money through PayPal and it was always on time. And it's always, I mean, everything, like for years up until 2017, the only thing we owned was the building. All the lots that we gardened on and farmed on, the city owned them. It took forever for the city to want to sell us anything. And then it was, all of a sudden I was able to talk to one person, tell them what we were doing. And they was like, oh no, we need to give you ownership because we wasn't even be able to get money to increase our infrastructure, And so I attribute that to the spiritual form of the farm and the whole thing. I think it's led by higher power. Every time I think about I think I need to go get a job to help support it. Something happens, and it's just been spiritual for me. But even in this space, I don't feel like I'm in the middle of a big city. Even when people come here, they don't want to leave. People come, they throw down a blanket, and just lay here. Some people come here to have picnics. People come with their books just to sit around, and to hear chickens and goats in the background it almost feels like you're in a rural setting.
That was beautiful. Jamiah or Marcus, you want to add in?
Yeah, I'll briefly say that, this first micro farm here is actually on a very busy street, and yet our employees and staff and volunteers still say it's therapeutic. They do. They love to come here on a Sunday morning, Wednesday morning. We're done by like 9:30 a.m. So it's in the morning, very lovely to be with the plants. And our next micro farm will be on a much quieter residential street. So staff that our partnership is actually with a anti-recidivism group. So certain people who have had like records got caught up in that system, but are still good people and want to do something different. They can work with us, and we'll set them up in a garden. So yeah, very, very beneficial to the spirit and rejuvenation.
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick. Yeah, from my experience last summer in the middle of the protest, CHOP, as it was called, Capitol Hill Occupied protests, was one of the most traumatic places I've been in my life. There were people who got shot there. There were people who were raped. There was a lot of violence going on due to the movement, due to police violence that was occurring. People were getting tear gassed on a regular basis, and I had thousands of people come up to me in the garden and just say thank you for building a garden here, because for a lot of folks, when they needed a break from the madness that was occurring there during the protests, they would come to the garden and garden, and that space was healing for so many folks. And it's great. Talking about being in the middle of busy streets, wherever, being in the middle of the city, being in the middle of the hood. By putting a garden there, we create space for people to heal, to grow, and to address traumas in a way that's healing,
I fully agree with everything three of you all have said so far. I've shared separately, and Marcus, I'm not sure if I sent the picture of my garden to you, but I have an urban garden on my balcony in the middle of Los Angeles, in Koreatown. And it's a little ridiculous. It's like a little food forest. It's mostly tropical trees. And as Mark found out, a pineapple growing there. But anytime I'm like watering or just like, moving stuff around, like I just get lost. And even though in the middle of the city, you're just connected to dirt. You're connected to something, even though they're in pots. Just the amount of green and the photosynthesis happening around you, it just feels more natural. It feels more human than the concrete jungle that we find ourselves in often. The question that I want to ask you all, and because what was interesting for me in creating this panel, specifically with the three of you all, is, and it was touched upon very briefly, Jamiah, you're in Los Angeles. I'm in Los Angeles, so I can connect with you on that. It's usually warm. The summers are long. It can be in the up to 100 in October, or I've even seen it 90 degrees in November. But typically the growing season is all the way from about maybe April, March, or really the whole year. But I would say the heart of it is like 9 to 10 months long. It is a very long growing season. Doesn't rain a lot, which is fortunate and mostly unfortunate. But for plants that do get access to water, it's great. But it has its challenges, right? Los Angeles. Seattle is in a very gloomy but also wet environment that doesn't necessarily always snow, but it can happen. But it has its own challenges, right? And in Detroit, you are actually in a cold environment. You are actually seeing all four seasons, unlike the other two gentlemen on the call who might experience it to some extent. But you got to deal with snow, and then you got all these animals, and you have this beautiful garden. There are all different challenges that not just your locations deal with, but that the people who are living in these environments do. So the question that I have for you all is, what are the largest hurdles to providing healthy food options that are in your community? And what resources have you found to be useful?
I guess I can go. Challenges. Challenges technically is mostly help. Because I don't know what it is, but well, part of it is because I grew up here. I got 5 brothers and 2 sisters. My father was very involved in the community. My grandmother was very involved in the community. And I think a lot of people think it's mine, like it's the Covingtons. It's not for everybody. So they're like hands off. The good part about that is they don't touch nothing, nothing. We've never had anything stolen. Our computer lab, there's no, on the house, there's no security door on the house. It's one little door lock. If they see something out of the way, I get a call or a text. It could be 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, because they look out for it. But I guess the biggest hurdle would be that they don't participate as far as the work part. The event part and them coming to get stuff and that kind of stuff, yeah, they're fine with that. But the actual digging in the dirt and getting stuff done, that's the hard part. One of the biggest resources that I have and have had is the Garden Resource Program here in Detroit. It was inside of the Greening of Detroit, but it transferred over into and started the Keep Growing Detroit. So KGD was like, the Garden Resource Program was like weight lifted off my shoulder, because my grandmother taught me how to garden, but it was just dig the soil up, plant it, keep it weeded and water it, but being involved with them, they taught us about, community engagement, and then composting. That first year, we were looking at stuff that wasn't even growing. And now you see stuff, we got collard leaves bigger than my head, and, everything growing real good, but it was all because we started going towards the soil, working with the soil.
Jamiah, I know you got to head out soon. You want to go ahead and jump in? Yep.
Yeah, thanks. And after this, I will have to. But it's a great question you asked about challenges, and it really got me thinking, because I'm grateful to not have a lot of the typical challenges, right? Like, for instance, our business model makes it to where I think money is going to be okay soon, in this scene. But the challenge is actually doing the thing at the pace the things needed to be done. Like, I can only do one of these micro farms like maybe every 2 months, 1 month. I mean, it takes a lot of focus, a lot of people movement and activity. You can't, pardon my French, I'm gonna curse, but you can't fuck up at this, or else it's the end of it, right? Upset the neighbors, break something on the house, or like, get a reputation for being a jerk or something. I don't know. But this is a capacity issue at this point, because there's a great demand for better food. There's a great demand for better jobs, different career paths, as growers, urban farmers, landscapers. There's a great demand from the city for better solutions to resilience challenges and water challenges in LA. There's a lot of demand from us right now. Like, we're grateful for the attention, but really so the greatest challenge is self-care, I think. Finding time to convince myself it's worthy to like go work out, and it's worthy to like see a friend, or like talk to my mom. I should call my mom. So it's just gotten really busy. It's just gotten really crazy. And meanwhile, as a Black man, I mean, let's talk about that for a brief moment. That I feel like I'm running a long distance sprint, and I'm looking over at my brothers and being like, "Hey, how you doing?" And they're like, "Hey, Jamiah, I'm good, but I can't help you." And I'm like, I can't help you either. We just got to keep running. We're like in this sprint. I can't give you anything because I need it. And I can't ask anything of you because I know you need your stuff. So anyway, that's my time. But as I peace out, I want to say to Marcus and Mark, and also Chris and the team that's made this happen, thank you for inviting me. And let's definitely keep in touch. Even though Detroit and Seattle are far away, these challenges are the same, and being leaders and Black men is the same everywhere. So yeah, it's nice to meet you.
Thank you so much, Jamiah. Mark and Marcus, before Jamiah heads out, you want to just say any lasting calls? We'll give one more question and then we'll just wrap up.
Yeah, Jamiah, thank you for saying that, man. I feel like as far as Mother Earth and what's the resources that they're there, like, you know, getting access to the resources is just a matter of capacity, and it's a matter of just security, right? Personal security, you know, having having strong relationships with the people around you. And, you know, those are the things that are challenging when we're up against so much as a community, as individuals, as Black men, as trans, as queer. Our identities are constantly being challenged in this work. And, you know, it's so easy to fall right back into capitalistic ways of doing things, you know, and obviously business and capitalism are two separate things. But it's so easy to fall into these bad paradigms where, you know, we do end up being a jerk to somebody because we're stressed out, or, you know, those are the things that are challenging this work. Those are the things that like will end you as an organization, or end the way in which you can actually give back to the community. And Mark, I am so honored and to be in your presence as someone who's been doing this work for 18 years, because I'm sure you've been going through all this, man. You've probably had enough drama and all this and had to work through that and actually find ways to keep bringing community back together and keep engaging community and find ways to love each other through all this work, because ultimately it's not about the work, it's about the relationships. So that's the resources that we got to learn to draw on, is how do we bring our people into this work? How do we be healthy? But yeah, I see you, brother. Take care. Get that self-care. I see you. Get it or keep work, whatever, man. But so yeah, great question. Great question. Yeah.
And the last question for today, and I don't want to be respectful of everyone's time. We had one more question from, I'm going to try and pull it up here. It was from Jeffrey Mann. Could you please address food distribution? I think this question kind of came from a little bit in maybe Jamiah's work. Marcus and Mark, if you guys want to share as well. I have 4 grow boxes and it produces even more food than I can use with a large extended family that lives locally. How do you get the food distributed when it is harvested?
Well, here from the beginning, it was a community garden. So the community garden space was wide open for us. So people just came and pick when they wanted to. But it got to the point where like our growing season was even shorter because some people don't know how to pick, and they would pick stuff wrong and it would die, like cucumbers die real quick. We get a small harvest of cucumbers. So this was the first year out of 14 growing seasons that we actually locked the gate on. We put a fence up a couple of years ago, but we locked it this year. And it was like an experiment to see how much we could produce in that space, because we never knew. And this year it was crazy, because myself and my mother, we would pick the stuff, and I built a farm stand across the street. So we would pick the stuff and put it into the farm stand, and people would just be able to come pick, you know, at random. And it worked out good, but we hardly have any waste. We compost, and we also feed animals too if we have anything that's, you know, rotting or falling off onto the ground. But most of our stuff goes to the community. They literally come or call and say what they want, and I'm like, okay, we got it, come get it, you know. And so that's how ours work.
From our perspective, similar, you know, definitely trying to figure out how do we start developing, whether boxes or just community around the food. And we started a whole nother organization called Ujamaa Food Circle, in which we not only were trying to bring produce to families, but we also were trying to incorporate bulk foods, dry goods. So bringing kind of that wholesale perspective, trying to step past the grocery store and create opportunities for folks to get lower pricing. But essentially in this, like basically reaching out to community, finding folks who are interested in getting food, and pretty much doing like weekly deliveries. So we started actually taking food to people because one, we do live in a city, but the public transportation here is not that good. So we knew that in order to actually be able to distribute and not have waste, we would have to go to the people. So we develop food boxes, deliver out to families, and then try to incorporate families back into the beginning of the process. So they're helping to pack and package the food, and also deliver the food out to their communities is what we're working on now. We also get to a lot of mutual aid groups. Is a lot of way to get rid of excess food. There are a lot of people in the community who are cooking for unhoused folks, or delivering folks food to families or community centers. So just reaching out to places where people already are and trying to donate food to them is also a good way to distribute excess food you have.
That's great. And I know one of the things that I've seen in LA is that there are local Black food gardens and markets, farmers markets, in which they invite local community members to share some of their food and crops. And that would be a form of a crop or a plant harvest share. And, one of the things that came to mind when you were speaking, Mark and Marcus, is, when we talk about business and equity and building that kind of activation that you were sharing before, Marcus, when we talk about the issues of transportation and moving the food around, because everything has a shelf life, it has to get to where it has the maximum nutrients that it has before it spoils. And when we're making these foods that are healthy, they don't have the preservatives and the pesticides and everything on there. So they have to get to where they're going as soon as possible. As a result of that, getting the food out into the right networks has to work really well. And it makes me think of like collaborations with things like Uber or Lyft and some of these or even more sustainable electrical companies that can work with local food organizations such as you all's to help move that food around to create that network. There's no shortage for how it can happen. It's creating that organization that could work. And I'm sure there's probably some systems in which that exists, but I'd love to see it on a larger scale to help support Black and brown communities that need that food. I want to thank you all for joining us today, for the great questions. I enjoyed and learned a lot. I'm pretty sure Mark and Marcus enjoyed themselves and learned a lot, and Jamiah as well. Mark and Marcus, do y'all have any final words? You kind of already dropped some knowledge already a second ago, but do y'all have any final words before we wrap this up?
I just say if you're starting something like this or you getting involved in something, just do it and don't quit. Don't give up. The smiles on kids' faces, the smiles on your community's face, it give you a lot of joy. Don't give up.
Yeah, and just kind of with that, if you maybe don't have the time to do this work, really support folks that are doing it. It's hard out here on the ground. Funding can be challenging. Volunteers are come and go. So if you're interested in this work, find someone in your community who's doing it and support them.
Thank you so much. Mark, if you want to share your contact info in the chat for, I believe it was Elizabeth who reached out, that'd be great. If not, Elizabeth, you can just contact us directly if you want to connect with Mark, or I'm pretty sure you could hit him up on his website as well. Just let us know. But to everyone else, and the great questions and the food, feed your block, do everything you got to do. And I'm excited to have you all here. Our main goal for having this conversation today was just talking about those processes that exist. Because we know and learning in the pandemic that is still going on, having access to food, having access to many other things is a necessity and a need. So thank you all again, Marcus and Mark. God bless y'all, love y'all. And Black men, take care of yourself so we can all take care of each other. Thank you.